The oscillator is the most important section in Omnisphere due to its powerful synthesis capabilities. Oscillators can either be sample-based or internal DSP generated. When using synth oscillators, different waveforms can be selected from this menu. Saw square fat, which is great for monophonic sounds. Saw square bright, which is excellent for polyphonic synth sounds. Triangle, sine, and noise. In the main section, there are 5 parameters. Movements of these 3 sliders are reflected in the waveform display. The reason why the first 2 waveforms are called saw square is because the shape parameter can set them to a sawtooth, or a square, or anything in between. Symmetry is like pulse width, but in Omnisphere it can be applied to any of the waveforms. And this is the hard sync slider. On many synths in the past, getting the hard sync sound required losing one of the oscillators, but in Omnisphere, there's a hidden hard sync oscillator that allows the hard sync effect. It's engaged when the hard sync slider is used. The analog knob introduces inconsistency into pitch and phase, making the oscillator sound more like old hardware synthesizers. Before 50%, it's only destabilizing the phase, and after 50%, it also starts to destabilize the tuning. So as I increase the analog knob, you'll hear how it can go from a sterile digital result to sounding like an uncalibrated analog synth at the extreme end. The phase knob controls the point in the waveform at which the oscillator will start when triggered. You can only hear the changes in phase when 2 layers are used. Now it's important to mention that all these controls are modulatable. You can apply the following synthesis capabilities to synth oscillators: frequency modulation, ring modulation, wave shaping, and 2 of the voice multiplier options. The voice multiplier basically works by adding more voices to the main oscillator. There are 2 voice multiplier options available in synth mode: unison and harmonia. Please refer to the tutorial for each section for more information. Okay, now let's try creating a patch using some of the features we've covered so far. I'm going to select this waveform, and I'm going to set the symmetry about here, and I'm going to go ahead and modulate it with an LFO. Now modulate hard sync with velocity, and turn on the filter section. I'm going to set the shape over here and enable unison. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the arpeggiator. And I'll make the filter envelope decay shorter. Nice. I'm going to set the hard sync to about here. And now I'm going to enable FM to make this sound just a little bit more aggressive. Now I'll change the waveform to a sine wave. Cool. I created that sound really fast using only a few of the features we covered, so you can see right away what a powerful and flexible synthesizer Omnisphere really is. But there's something else I need to show you about synth oscillators, and that's the noise generator. When using the noise generator, these controls have different functions. Shape is filter cutoff. Symmetry morphs the filter into different filter types. And the hard sync slider acts as a stereo width control. When the analog knob is all the way down, the noise is the same every time you trigger a note. When it's turned up, the noise is different every time. Okay, now let's check out a patch created using only the noise generator. This patch contains several modulation routings to create a constantly evolving sound. Cool. Now let's go over sample-based oscillators. When the oscillator is in sample mode, the waveforms, which are called sound sources, are selected from the sound source browser. From the edit page, the sound source browser can be accessed by clicking anywhere on this area. Each of these represents a sound source. A sound source can range from a really complex multi-sample with many velocities to a single sample stretched across the keyboard. I'm going to select the sound source bouncing piano strings. I'll close the browser, and let's hear it. The timbre slider can be set to one of two modes, crush or shift. When it's in shift mode, moving the slider transposes the mapping of the samples in one direction and changes the pitch in the opposite, producing really cool variations. Let's check it out. There are lots of different sounds you can get by only using timbre shifting, so it's really worth spending some time with it. The more samples that are mapped across the keyboard, the more effective timbre shift is. The timbre slider is modulatable, but keep in mind that the timbre modulation can only work with new note on messages, not when you hold a note. Let's try that. I've loaded this sound source. I'm going to modulate timbre with randomize, and I'm going to turn on the arpeggiator. With every note the arpeggiator triggers, a new random timbre value will be set. Let's check it out. And real quick, let's try a different sound source. All right, I'm going to unmodulate timbre. And when timbre is in crush mode, bit crushing and low-pass filtering are applied when moving the slider to the left. And bit crushing and high-pass filtering are applied when moving the slider to the right. Start determines where in the sample the sound source will start playing. This sound source has a percussive attack. And I'll remove it using start. When a sound source has more than 12 zones, like this one, start will have a 1 second maximum range, enough in this case to remove the attack. When a sound source has 12 zones or less, the start range is up to 90 seconds. Let's try another sound source. This sound source has a 50-second long sample stretched across the keyboard. In this case, start can be set at any point within the total duration of the sample. I'm going to go ahead and modulate it with an LFO. And I'll turn on the arpeggiator. And let's check it out. Nice. These controls select the fade and size to be applied when using start to avoid clicks. When this option is selected, there is no fade applied. A small fade can be applied by selecting this option, and a slightly bigger one can be applied by clicking here. The last control in the main section is this one, which turns the keyboard tracking on and off. Okay, so let's talk about the oscillator subpage functions, because that's what's really cool with Omnisphere, is that we can apply these interesting synthesis features to bring the samples to life. We can apply FM, ring modulation, wave shaping, and the options of the voice multiplier. There's a third option to the voice multiplier section that can only be applied to sample-based oscillators, and that's granular. Let's try creating a patch using some of these features. I've loaded this eBode piano sound source. I'm going to go ahead and set start to here and modulate it with randomize. And now I'll enable the voice multiplier and set it to granular. Let's check it out. Now I'm going to enable the wave shaper, set the depth at about here, and turn on the filter section. Now I'll go to the voice multiplier subpage and select harmonia instead of granular. I'm going to turn the wave shaper off, and here's a quick tip. The LEDs below each of the subpages double as power switches, so turning a section off is as simple as this. Done. I'm going to turn FM on, and I'll set the depth at about here, and I'm going to modulate it with a mod envelope. I'm going to go to the main section, and I'll set timbre crush at about here, and modulate it using velocity. I'm going to use a mod envelope to modulate amplitude, and let's check it out. We can do all this stuff really fast, and listen to the original. It's totally different. Keep in mind that although there's a lot that can be done in the oscillator section, the more sections that are turned on, the more impact it will have in the CPU. Presets for the oscillator section can be accessed from this drop-down menu and can give you an idea of what the capabilities are. The oscillator section is the most important section in Omnisphere. The synthesis capabilities that can be applied to both synth and sample-based oscillators open virtually endless possibilities for sound design.